It always starts small. A detail, a twist, a harmless sentence. I was late because of traffic. I don't remember saying that. I'm fine. But if you zoom in, if you really pay attention, you'll see it. The flicker behind the eyes, the calculation, the pause that shouldn't be there. Not every liar is born a manipulator. Some are born terrified of rejection, of weakness, of being seen too clearly, and so they invent something easier to live with. Not just a story, a version. Let's talk about how lies don't always come from malice. Sometimes they come from survival. The compulsive liar doesn't sit down one day and say, I will now rewrite reality. It happens slowly, unconsciously, like a skin they grow into. Let's talk about the birth of the inner editor. Everyone lies sometimes. To avoid conflict, to spare feelings, to protect themselves. But the compulsive liar doesn't just lie to others. They lie through them. Every interaction becomes a test. Who do you want me to be right now? The lie is shaped by hunger, for approval, for control, for escape. So the truth becomes inconvenient, too rigid, too unforgiving. And the liar, they learn to bend, to shift, to perform. Let's talk about narrative dissociation. After a while, they don't just lie about the past. They lie about who they are. They create histories that never happened. They remember wounds that never bled. They exaggerate victories they never earned. Why? Because the real version of themselves feels empty, insufficient, unlovable. So they decorate it, polish it, trade it in for something better. But something breaks in that trade, something irreversible. Let's talk about the erosion of core memory. When you lie enough times, you begin to forget what's real. You start to believe fragments of your own fiction, not because you want to, but because you need to. The brain rewires. Memory distorts. The line between invention and fact becomes mist. And soon, you're defending events that never occurred with the intensity of someone telling the truth. Let's talk about emotional self-reinforcement. Each lie that gets accepted becomes fuel, proof that the false version is working, that people like it, that it keeps you safe. So the liar starts leaning into it. They become addicted to the feeling of being seen as someone else. And with each lie, the real self dies a little. Let's talk about false empathy mirroring. A compulsive liar often becomes who you need them to be. If you're broken, they've been through worse. If you're successful, they're just as impressive. If you're vulnerable, they're safe and warm and open. It's not about manipulation, not at first. It's about connection, or rather, the illusion of it. They can make you feel seen, heard, understood, but only through distortion, only through reflection. Let's talk about the lie as language. For the compulsive liar, truth isn't the default. It's a decision, a strategy, a risk. Every sentence is crafted for effect. Every memory is adjusted for response. Every conversation is layered. It's not about what happened. It's about what will land, what will protect them, what will keep the image intact. Let's talk about the slow decay of trust internally. Most people think the compulsive liar deceives others. But the deeper tragedy, they deceive themselves. They start to believe their masks, to fall in love with their personas, to grieve things they never truly lost, to hate people for crimes they never committed, because the story becomes the identity. And when that happens, when the fiction fuses with the self, there is no going back. Let's pause here. This is just the beginning. The moment the lie stops being something you said and starts becoming someone you are. You might think the worst thing about a compulsive liar is the lie itself, but that's only the surface. The real damage runs deeper into the territory of confusion, emotional erosion, and cognitive collapse. Because what they damage most is your grip on reality. Let's begin with a question. Have you ever doubted something you know happened because someone told you calmly, confidently, repeatedly that it didn't? Welcome to the world built by a compulsive liar. Let's talk about narrative contamination. The compulsive liar doesn't just tell stories. They insert them into your memory, into your feelings, into your past. They rewrite moments. They bend timelines. They claim things were said or never said. They insist that you misunderstood, misheard, overreacted. At first, you push back. You trust your own memory. You hold your ground, but the erosion is subtle. And over time, you start to question. And once you question, the liar has already won. Let's talk about emotional destabilization. When someone lies repeatedly, you don't just lose trust in them. You begin to lose trust in yourself. You wonder, did I imagine that fight? Was I too sensitive? Am I being unfair? You start apologizing for things you never did. You start defending their version of reality to other people just to keep the peace. And somewhere along the line, your sense of what's real begins to unravel. Let's talk about confusion as control. A compulsive liar doesn't need to shout. They don't need to threaten. They just need to keep you uncertain. Uncertain people are compliant. They doubt themselves. They hesitate to confront. They crave validation. So the liar provides it intermittently. A crumb of affection here. A moment of honesty there. Just enough to make you believe that maybe it's not so bad. But it is that bad. You're just too fogged to see it clearly. Let's talk about false vulnerability. One of the most painful tricks is when a compulsive liar cries in your arms about how they hate lying. They say they're broken. They say they don't know why they do it. They say they wish they could stop. And you believe them because it feels real. But here's the trap. They've lied so well, they've even lied to themselves. So their pain is real, but the cause is false. The tears come from a place of genuine suffering, but not accountability. It's not remorse. It's emotional camouflage. Let's talk about the bystander's metamorphosis. If you live with a compulsive liar long enough, you start changing. You become anxious, hyper-aware, obsessive with facts, receipts, timelines. You develop rituals of checking screenshots, recordings, memory journals, just to keep your version of reality intact. You become paranoid, but not irrational, because the paranoia is born from pattern recognition. You're trying to protect your mind from being rewritten again. Let's talk about why confrontation doesn't work. You gather your proof. You confront them calmly. You expect a reckoning. Instead, you get deflection, minimization, a tearful explanation, an angry accusation, silence. They don't collapse. They adapt. They rewrite again. And suddenly you're arguing about tone or timing or your attitude and not the fact that you caught them. Again, let's talk about the collateral victims. It's not just romantic partners who suffer. It's friends, parents, children, coworkers. Everyone starts walking on eggshells. People stop trusting each other because the liar triangulates, telling one version to A, another to B, until A and B doubt each other instead of the liar. The compulsive liar leaves behind a trail of fractured relationships and confused, exhausted people, and they often don't even realize it. Let's talk about the loneliness of the untrusted. Eventually, the liar runs out of places to hide. People stop answering. Circles shrink. Reputations crumble. But instead of self-awareness, they feel persecuted, misunderstood. Everyone turns against me. And the irony, that's the one thing they say that's completely true. Let's pause here. The compulsive liar doesn't mean to destroy others. But when your identity is built on falsehood, every interaction becomes a crime scene. Let's say for a moment you could walk into their mind, not just their words, not the charming smile or perfect memory recall, but inside, where the scaffolding of identity is constantly being rebuilt with paper walls and glue stick morals. What would you see? You'd expect arrogance. You'd expect a mastermind. You'd expect someone smugly weaving deception like a spider with steel thread. But you'd be wrong. What you'd see instead is terror. Let's talk about the anxiety of narrative maintenance. Lying all the time sounds easy until you realize that it's not about one lie. It's about maintaining a web of them. Dozens, hundreds, interconnected half-truths that all need to remain internally consistent. It's a constant mental tax. What did I tell her about last Tuesday? Did I say my dad was dead or estranged? Wait, who did I blame for that argument last time? They don't sleep easily. They don't relax in conversations because every word they say could collapse the structure. Let's talk about self-fragmentation. A compulsive liar often creates multiple selves, not clinical multiple personalities, but social mask layers so thick they no longer remember which version is closest to reality. There's the victim self, the hero self, the wounded but wise self, the just like you self. They adjust these selves like changing clothes for different occasions. And after a while, they forget what they look like naked. Let's talk about truth decay. Some liars know they're lying, but compulsive liars, they begin to lose the ability to tell what's true and what isn't. Not performatively, neurologically. It's a real phenomenon. Repeated self-deception alters memory consolidation. The brain begins storing the lie in the same way it stores facts. So when they say, I never said that, or I was there, I remember, they might actually believe it because their brain has overwritten the original file. Let's talk about the phantom guilt. You'd think they feel no remorse, but that's not always true. Sometimes, late at night, when everything is still, they feel it. A low hum of wrongness. They don't always know why they feel bad. They don't always connect it to the lies. But something gnaws at them. A face they hurt, a promise they twisted, a version of themselves they can never get back. But instead of facing it, they lie to themselves again. This is who I had to be. They would have left me if they knew the truth. No one really wants honesty anyway. And with each justification, the bars of their internal prison grow thicker. Let's talk about the addiction to control. At the core of many compulsive liars is a deep, clawing fear of being out of control. They lie to manage perception, to control emotional outcomes, to prevent chaos, or so they tell themselves. But what starts as a survival mechanism becomes a compulsion. They lie even when they don't need to, even when the truth would be easier, even when the lie serves no purpose at all. Why? Because it feels safer. Because it's automatic. Because it's who they are now. Let's talk about intimacy intolerance. A compulsive liar craves closeness, but can't survive it. True intimacy requires vulnerability, exposure, a willingness to be seen without the script. But that's terrifying to someone whose whole identity is a mosaic of invention. So just when someone gets too close, just when a partner or friend begins to truly see them, the liar sabotages it. They ghost. They pick a fight. They fabricate something unforgivable because disappearing feels safer than being revealed. Let's talk about the absence of anchor. What do you hold on to? When even your own memories are negotiable, who are you when the people who loved you only knew versions you created? What does regret mean if you can't trust the story that led to it? This is the prison, not made of walls, but mirrors. Everywhere they look, they see themselves, but never the same reflection twice. Let's pause. This isn't just a flaw. It's a form of identity collapse, a life lived in performance, a soul that's slowly forgetting how to speak truth, even internally. Let's be honest. By now, you might think they're beyond saving, that someone who lies this much must be too far gone, too fractured, too invested in their own fiction to ever come back to reality. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Some compulsive liars do try to stop, and what they face when they try to live honestly isn't clarity, it's withdrawal. Let's talk about the lie as a drug. Lying becomes a psychological substance, a shortcut to power, a cushion against shame, a fix for panic. It's not just a habit, it's relief. So when a compulsive liar tries to stop, they don't feel better. They feel raw, exposed, unarmed, because for the first time in years, they're meeting the world without their armor of fiction. Let's talk about withdrawal symptoms. Stopping isn't peaceful. It's brutal. There's anxiety from the uncertainty of telling the truth. There's shame as memories of the lies come flooding back. There's fear that people will leave if they know the real you. And there's emptiness because when you stop lying, you realize how many of your connections were built on fantasy. How many people love the mask, not the person beneath? Let's talk about the honesty relapse. Even when they try to be truthful, the lies creep back in, not maliciously, not even intentionally, just automatically. They catch themselves halfway through a sentence, embellishing, exaggerating, adjusting a story to sound better, feel safer. It's reflexive. It's muscle memory. And breaking it feels like amputating a part of yourself. Let's talk about what recovery actually looks like. Most people think recovery means never lying again, but that's unrealistic. Even average people lie dozens of times a week. For the compulsive liar, recovery means awareness. It means catching yourself, admitting it in real time, saying, I just lied. I don't know why. Let me correct that. It means sitting with discomfort instead of trying to escape it. It means choosing truth even when it makes you look bad, even when it's inconvenient, even when no one is watching. Let's talk about the isolation phase. Recovery often begins in solitude because compulsive liars need to strip away all the false versions they've presented to different people. They pull away from social groups. They avoid conversations, not because they don't want connection, but because they don't trust themselves to be real yet. It's a dark, lonely process, but it's where the work begins. Let's talk about the hardest truth to tell, the one to yourself. The core of compulsive lying isn't about fooling others. It's about hiding from yourself. So one of the first steps toward healing is standing in front of a mirror and saying something devastatingly honest about who you are, what you've done, and what you've avoided becoming. That moment breaks something open, and sometimes that's what it takes. Let's talk about relational repair. Can relationships survive after years of lies? Sometimes, yes, but not through apology alone, not through promises. It takes brutal transparency, letting others ask anything, letting them doubt you, letting them walk away, and still choosing honesty every day, even when it doesn't get you anything in return, because only then do the people around you begin to believe in the person, not the performance. Let's talk about the unexpected strength in truth. Something strange happens. After a long enough stretch of honesty, the compulsive liar starts to feel different, lighter, more grounded. Conversations get easier. Memories become clearer. They sleep better. They begin to realize they can still be liked, still be loved, even when they're imperfect, even when the story isn't polished. And that realization, that's the beginning of freedom. Let's end with this. A compulsive liar isn't doomed, but they are imprisoned by stories they built to protect themselves and forgot how to dismantle. There is a way out, but it requires something far harder than deception ever was: accountability. Because in the end, truth isn't just moral, it's medicinal. And some people, after a lifetime of fabrication, finally choose to live, not as a character, but as a human being